Hot damn, here it is. The time is upon us for a brand spanking new Pokémon adventure. Or at least it was, like 5 months ago. Pokémon Sword and or Shield. Welcome to the Galar region. It's a whole new world we live in. Supposedly based on the UK, which personally I don't really see. I mean, all of the trains are free and on time and oh wait, yeah, never mind, that seems about right. Story-wise, it's your standard Pokémon affair. You play as a young child, setting off on your big adventure with your cutscene buddy from the same small town. You get your starter, a goodbye from your ma, a box to carry around your little demon sister, and you're good to go. Oh yeah, and a spoiler warning I guess, at this stage there's probably about 2 people left on the planet who haven't already either played through the game or are so angry at it that they're soaring to never so much as look at a Pikachu again. I'm just going to give my own thoughts on the game. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would you want to know my thoughts about anything, especially Pokémon? And that's an excellent question. So, the main story follows you and your various friend/rival people setting out on the gym challenge. After mixing things up with the island challenges last generation in Sumo, we're really getting back to formula with 8 gyms to beat in a set order, but with the exception of the Champions Cup tournament in place of an Elite Four. This is a change I really quite liked. It fits the whole football-y theme the gyms have going on, and it lets you face off against the different gym leaders again with stronger teams, rather than repeating the same 4 trainers every time. The gyms also functioned as actual stadiums for spectators to watch the battles. It was a nice touch. It made the gym challenge feel like something with actual cultural significance in the region, rather than just the building in town all of the NPCs point you towards. Also, having your very own fan cheer you on at each of the stadiums with their Biplug that evolves as you go along is pretty darn cute too. Meet your best buddy Hop. He wants to be the best like no one ever was. Just like his older brother, who happens to be the greatest champion the Galar region has ever seen, and I'm almost certain that their parents love them both equally. And you'll get to know him quite well, as you have to talk to him at pretty much the start and end of every town in the game, where he loses to you in yet another battle. But what he lacks in skill, he makes up for with sheer enthusiasm. Right up until he loses a battle against someone else, goes through an existential crisis and is plagued by self-doubt as he realises that maybe he allowed his feelings of inadequacy surrounding his older brother to have already determined too much of his journey so far. Maybe he needs to take some time to examine who he is as a person and oh, he's back to normal again? Oh. Okay. Whew, that was close. Almost made an interesting character there. Oh, wait, no, he's decided to do his own thing again. Good for him. But Hop isn't the only friend/rival person. There's other trainers taking part in the gym challenge who you face off with from time to time to spice things up. You got Marnie and her Team Yell fandom, which is pretty darn funny, and Bede, the pseudo-antagonistic douchey guy with a sad backstory, and if you ask me, probably the most interesting of the 3.
Alright, here comes Challenger Bede. I have it on good authority that he is in fact an orphan.
I was quite glad to have these 3 other trainers doing the gym challenge along with me. I was already kind of sick of the amount of times you have to battle Hop, so it's nice to have other rivals to mix up the teams you battle against and that grow and level up alongside yours. It's neat. I also quite like how the main focus is your journey to become the champion. It's about as basic as the story can get, and while there is of course the inevitable save the world plot present in the game involving whatever legendary is in the box of the game you bought, it takes up significantly less time than the other entries in the series. I kept waiting to get roped into it, but it just kind of never happened. It all took place in the background. Something would happen, you'd go into a cutscene and all the adults are like, nah, we got it, you go beat another gym. It's also pretty refreshing that the team of the game, Team Yell, are just a bunch of overzealous fans standing over the girl they want to win the championship, rather than a secret organisation with a research facility and a diabolical plan to harness the power of blank in order to make the world blank. So that role goes to Chairman Rose, the mega-rich head of a massive conglomerate that owns just about everything in Galar. And he's somehow managed to capture the Pokémon Eternatus, who brought about an apocalyptic event thousands of years ago called the Darkest Day. So naturally he wants to feed Eternatus magic wishing stars or something so he can create unlimited sustainable energy. Because of course he does. What could possibly go wrong? Oh my god, things went wrong, and only you can stop it with the help of Zacian if you're a loser and Zamazenta if you're cool. Why not have a guess which game I bought, by the way? You save the day and get back to winning the Champion Cup. Fun times all round.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Chairman Rose's plan, which looks pretty darn evil from the outside, was in fact a misguided attempt to harness the power of Dynamax energy to power the region and avoid an upcoming energy crisis. In 1,000 years. If the game is going for an environmental message, it's certainly a weird one. Why not an impending energy crisis that the professors are trying to warn people about, and the rich fat cat wants to keep things as they are because he's making a fortune burning cargoes or something? And then their willful ignorance brings about the darkest day, so you gotta team up with Sword and or Shield Dog to beat the bad guy, and Eternatus is there too, I guess? I don't know, I'm not a writer. I mean, it's fine the way it is, I guess. I just thought it was a bit of an odd choice to go with. I don't know if the story in the expansion will be in any way related to this, or if they'll be their own self-contained adventures, but the Crown Tundra will apparently include exploring inside of raid dens, so we might find out a bit more about the whole Dynamax thing. I mean, it was touched on in the base game, but the extent of the professor's knowledge who actually study this topic pretty much extends to Pokemon get big sometimes? And yeah, that's pretty much it actually, yeah. And since we're on the topic, Dynamaxing, one of the big new additions to the game. And gee whiz, I would have loved to have been in the office the day they thought of that one.
Yeah.
Going into the game, honestly, I thought it was stupid. It's Pokemon, but it's big. That's it. Gigantamaxing, on the other hand, is something only certain Pokemon can do that functions similar to Dynamaxing, but they get their own individual Gigantamax form and some exclusive moves. To me, it seems that they wanted Gigantamaxing to replace both Mega Evolutions and Z moves, which are missing from the game, by combining elements of each. Pokemon takes on a new form. You can do it only once per battle, though it is time limited, and moves are replaced by more powerful attacks of each type, though I'm pretty disappointed that they seem to have completely replaced them both with Gigantamaxing. Mega Evolutions were one of my favourite additions to the series, and Z moves, honestly I didn't care very much for, but it was explained in the games as a technique that was exclusive to the Alola region. But Mega Evolutions, while starting in Kalos, clearly made their way to other regions like Hoenn and Alola. And I thought it was a pretty well established mechanic at this stage. It just feels like it would be stupid to end it there and never bring it back, so I really hope they do. I mean, I'm sure some people had their problems with it, but they made so many of the meh Pokemon that were never really viable, not only usable, but really good. So for the sake of these guys, I really hope Mega Evolutions make a return to the series, otherwise they're destined to a life of obscurity yet again. Like Z moves before it, I hope Dynamaxing is something that was found in the Galar region, and maybe only the Galar region. During the story and in raids it was fine I guess, but it was only when I fought against other players online that I realised just how much I disliked it. For 3 turns it doubles HP, gets access to max moves that can still inflict damage on a Pokemon using Protect. They can also change the weather, boost the stats for the opponent and its ally, or lower an opponent's stats. All this while having access to its held item, unless it's a choice one, in which case it's ignored, and it's immune to flinching. I just think it's a bit much compared to changing form and ability, as well as boosting some stats, but the keystone takes up your held item. The Galar region itself is actually great. Each of the towns and cities have their own distinct look and feel to them, if a bit lacking in things to do. Outside of clothes shops, the occasional salon, and maybe a battle cafe, there isn't a whole lot of extra things to see or do in the towns. Especially Spikemouth. It serves as a gym battle location and nothing more. But entering a new location for the first time did have a certain charm to it. Some standout locations for me being Monostoke with its industrial design, the seaside town of Hulbury, Hammerlock's badass medieval looking walls and towers. Ballonlea just straight up being in a glowing mushroom forest was awesome. And Circhester being my personal favourite, though I'm definitely biased as I currently live in the city it's based on. I was also very disappointed in Winden, the final town you visit and the largest, which makes it feel even more empty, even with the wandering NPCs. Having a fancy hotel location here that's only used as a background for a few cutscenes felt like such a waste considering it takes up a decent chunk of the town, but there's literally nothing to do there. Probably the biggest new addition to Swoosh is the wild area, a large zone with free camera movement that you can explore from pretty early on in the game. It's got different biomes and weather conditions that can change up which Pokemon spawn in a given area. It's really neat and gives you a lot of options for adding some variety to your team with all the Pokemon available to you pretty much right off the bat. You can take part in Rotom Bag time trials, do a spot of fishing, check out glowing pillars of light to do raids. It's all around a pretty fun time. I'm never going to forget the first time during the store that I ran into a cool looking Pokemon that I wanted, only to see it was a much higher level than everything that I had, frantically trying to nope out and run away for dear life. It was pretty refreshing to not be the most powerful being in every area, for a while at least. If you're online, you can see other trainers running about too, or more often than not, standing completely still, but it makes the world feel a bit more populated, so it's a nice touch, but not really worth it. The only problem with it is that when you explore the wild area while connected to the internet, the game runs like you are playing it on PowerPoint. The frame rate absolutely tanks when it has those extra models on screen, and Pokemon can just pop in about 5 feet in front of you when you're on a bike. Why does the game run so horribly when connected to the internet, and more importantly, why did they think this was okay? The graphics are fine for the most part, definitely nothing to write home about. Better than the 3DS titles of course, but not really up to par with other AAA games on the Switch. Swoosh also has its fair share of really dodgy looking textures in certain areas that can be pretty jarring even with the game's art style. That being said, some of the locations look great, and the music accompanying some of them is so good, it really adds to the unique feel of the Galar region. But I'm a bit disappointed on the lack of scope in the world. The map is very linear for the story. You move from one town to the next, gym after gym, with people blocking other exits just to keep you on the straight and narrow. Yeah, you've got the wild area to explore, but I think it could have been integrated a bit better. It's like there's two main sections of the map, with your standard town route placed at different ends of the wild area. Personally, I think it would have worked nicely as a central hub right in the middle of the map, with routes towards the different gyms branching out from there, and maybe it could give you the option to beat some of them in any order you want, kinda like the Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild. The gym leaders' teams and levels could all be adjusted accordingly depending on how many you've completed, and then when you're doing the Champion Cup they all have their highest level teams for the rematch. Yeah, this would be more difficult to make, sure, and you'd probably need alternate versions of cutscenes with Sonia or the gym leaders, but I don't think it would be setting the bar too high for the mainline series debut on the Switch. Especially since the story is quite loosely tied to what you're doing at the moment. You just seem to bump into Sonia or Chairman Rose and they're like, ah, you got 4 gym badges, that's cool. Keep up the good work, kiddo. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love me some Pokemon. I still get a warm, fuzzy feeling when playing a new game in the series, like a mix of awe and nostalgia, exploring a new region, seeing the new Pokemon, which is why I definitely can't give an unbiased opinion on it. I just think that it's a really underwhelming upgrade when you compare it to the other staple Nintendo series that made a jump to the Switch hardware. And it might be unfair to compare them to what are very different games, but when playing these, it felt like, now this is a next-gen Zelda game. Now this is a next-gen Mario game. Now this is a next-gen Fire Emblem game. Now this is a Pokemon game that is being played on the Switch. That being said, the new Pokemon themselves are fantastic. I think they're probably my favourite since Gen 4 or 6. There were so many creative, cute and badass new designs that I liked a lot, though I don't think the legendaries were the best this time around. I think that the regional forms are better than ever too. They were a neat addition to Gen 7 with retyping and redesigns for some older Pokemon, with some more forgettable than others. But I'd argue that the Galar forms are more unique and mix things up a lot more with branching evolutions into completely different Pokemon with the likes of Sirfetch'd, Obstagoon, Mr. Rhyme and Cursula. The aforementioned raid battles make their introduction to the mainline games, likely taking some inspiration from Pokemon Go. You and 3 other trainers can team up to fight a Dynamax Pokemon and beat it for a chance to catch it. Cool. Though it's worth noting, in order to take part in online raids, trading or battles, you will need a Nintendo Switch Online subscription. And for raids anyway, you're going to want some real players to join you. The CPU trainers you get paired with, while doable with them, some raids may require a number of attempts. The choices of Pokemon and general battle strategy can be, let's say, unique. There's also timed raid events with special Gigantamax Pokemon in the wild area to keep you coming back and taking part. It's a nice touch. The YCOM system is the hub through which you interact with other players. Trading, battling, raid battles can all be done through it at the push of a button. The Y button, funnily enough. You can have it set to local connection for doing all this stuff with someone nearby, or online for, well, online. And it works. Sometimes. I do get error messages somewhat frequently, but it may be my Switch or internet connection not playing nice, so your mileage may vary. My biggest gripe with the YCOM system is that it updates rather infrequently. Quite a few times I would try to join a raid lobby, waste a few seconds connecting only for it to either get an error message or for the game to say that the lobby's full, especially if it's something rare where they fill up quite fast like for a Ditto raid. But even after getting this error message, the stamp is still showing up even though I can't join it. There's a refresh button for this that seems to show up when it feels like it. so more often than not I have to disconnect and reconnect to the internet to get more up-to-date stamps. It's just the cause of so much unnecessary frustration for me, and the fact that you need to pay for a Switch Online membership for this sort of functionality is pretty shitty for the year 2020. But it's not like it's entirely Game Freak's fault for this. The Switch's Online is just not good enough compared to the competition. But at least we have some SNES games. That's nice, I guess. I wish the game would give me an option to just turn off the Wycom notifications. It wasn't as much of a problem in the post-game as I started using it more then, but playing through the story I find them so annoying. Even if you aren't connected to the internet, or even if you have your Switch in flight mode, it just gives you notifications for the stuff you do. I know Chootle evolved, I was there when it happened, it was me who did those things. This might be in nitpicking territory, but I was honestly surprised at how much this annoyed me. The battle tower in post-game's pretty much the same as previous battled trees, trains and maisons. It's perfect for practicing new teams and strategies before vastly overestimating my abilities and taking the battle online where I lose. A lot. The online versus battle worked great for me. I've never had any issues with matchmaking and usually find games relatively quickly, so other than constantly getting my ass kicked in ranked battles, it works just fine. I also love it how the game compares the stats of a random group of players, just so you can see how much better the Chad Shield players are at the game. It's pretty fun to see. The biggest glaring omission from the base game was the absence of the Global Trade System, or GTS. Something that's been a feature since Gen 4. The GTS did make a comeback for Gen 8 recently though, but through Pokémon Home, so all of the trading is done through a separate app, and to my surprise it isn't locked behind a subscription paywall, so you don't need a Switch Online subscription to use it. Before this, we were stuck organising trades with people online or using the link trade option in-game with a random individual, hoping that they had what we wanted, like savages. Now we're back to the good old days of scrolling through endless trade offers of people demanding legendaries in return for a Metabot or something. And no, that wasn't an over-exaggeration. So yeah, Pokémon Home. The successor to Pokémon Bank, but it's like 3 times more expensive. But while the core functionality is sort of the same, it does have a bit more going for it, mainly Grand Oak and Ball Guy Jr. The service has a basic version and a premium one of which costs money for a subscription. I'll let you guess which. The basic plan lets you transfer Pokémon from Swoosh and Let's Go to your bank collection on the Switch, which is limited to 30 Pokémon, so literally 1 extra PC box worth. It's a bit on the small side if you ask me. And to my surprise, you can still access the GTS and Wonderbox trading, though you're limited to 1 and 3 at a time respectively for these. Although you need to use the smartphone app to access these features, the software on Switch is just for moving Pokémon between the games and home and managing your boxes. Trading is exclusive to the app for some reason. It makes using the GTS a bit more convoluted. You gotta put something in a box in the game, then boot up home to move it, and then use the app to do the trading. I don't really understand why this functionality couldn't be done on the Switch itself as well as the mobile app though. If you're willing to shell out some extra cash, you can spring for the premium subscription that bumps up your storage space from 30 to 6,000. It also has more detailed stats for the Pokémon, allowing you to check things like IVs as well. Then you can deposit up to 3 Pokémon at a time on the GTS, or watch 10 poorly rendered Pokéballs flying through space in Wonderbox trades. I actually quite like the smartphone app in general. You actually get 3D sprites to look at rather than a still image on the Switch. There's Pokédex entries from different games, challenges to complete, and it's cool to see popular or rare Pokémon trends on the GTS. Plus you get the added benefit of doing trades while you're out and about. But I really don't get why a lot of this couldn't have been done on the Switch itself, which is very stripped back and mainly just for moving stuff between home and the games. It's a bit of an odd move. And of course the main attraction, bringing forward your collection from previous games. Probably the main reason anyone would buy this. Whether this is worth the price of admission is up to you and your collection really. There are a few different subscription lengths, so you don't necessarily need to pay for the 12 months if you don't think you'll use it. Although there is still a massive number of Pokémon you can transfer into Home, but unable to transfer to Swoosh, so a lot of them will probably be chilling in that box for quite a while. Swoosh also introduced a plethora of quality of life changes that were long overdue and helped streamline things nicely. Being able to access your PC storage boxes from anywhere to change your party. Yes. Mints to change the effect nature has on your Pokémon stats to what you want. Yes. Having the move rememberer in every Pokémon Center and being able to use it without having to grind for hard skills. Yes. EXP candies that make leveling up in post-game easier than ever before. Yes. So much yes. Being able to pass on egg moves through the daycare centre without having to start breeding something from scratch. Yes. Using the Rodon bag to automatically traverse water without having to bring up a menu to select surf. Yes, although I do miss the novelty of surfing on an actual Pokémon, so that's going to be a lowercase yes from me. But with all these improvements, there were some questionable choices. Why are basic sound settings locked behind a pair of magic AirPods as an in-game item? Why can't I buy all the battle items with BP in the battle tower? Why did I have to grind the Champion Cup for weeks just to get a Flame Orb for my Obstagoon? I mean, Ball Guy was great during the game, but every time he gave me some repeat balls or wishing pieces, I would just die a little inside. I can't look at his big round head without getting flashbacks of mashing air for 3 hours straight.
Where the fuck is Double Slap?
Yeah, there was also a bunch of moves that got cut, but honestly, if I hadn't read about it, I don't think I would have noticed, until I moved something forward into Swoosh and it told me it had to forget an unusable move, but maybe that's just me. The game also changed from having all reusable TMs to having some moves as breakable TRs that can be bought with Watts or gotten from raid battles. Now I'm only highlighting this as an interesting change. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I can see that it kind of incentivizes exploration of the wild area and taking part in more online raids, but I could understand why some people would feel it's a step backwards. I'm also glad to see the return of Pokémon being visible in the overworld from the Let's Go games. It lets you see what's available on each of the routes right off the bat. For the most part anyway. Some encounters do happen in the long grass, but it's pretty easy to see when you're near something, even though you might not know what it is. I found myself doing much fewer battles in the wild after I'd already caught or beaten most things in a given area, so you can easily avoid repeat encounters. And because of this, I found I wasn't nearly as over-leveled for gym battles as I usually would be in the other games. The only problem I have with its implementation is that you can't see if a Pokémon is shiny from the overworld anymore, which is a bit of a bummer. I found myself wondering how many shinies I've casually walked past or even ran away from to avoid. Probably zero, but still. Okay, here we go. Get those dislike buttons at the ready. It's time to address the Don fan in the room. Or the... whatever this thing's called. Dexit. Talk about an online shitstorm. Before launch, Game Freak announced that Sword and Shield would not have the complete Pokédex available for the game. Out of the 900 or so Pokémon, only 400 of them would be available in-game. Yikes. So they could fit over 800 on this, but not this. Okay. It's not enough to make me not want to buy the game outright, but I can definitely understand people's frustration. That being said, some people took it too far, as the internet typically does, and developers received a slew of abuse and death threats. Pro tip? Don't do that. And of course there were calls to boycott the game, because of course there was. Everybody loves a good game boycott. That'll show them. And well, that only really works when people don't buy the game, so yeah, didn't really work out that well. I mean, it's not a deal breaker. It's not enough to ruin the time I spent playing the game or anything, but it does set a worrying precedent going forward. But I can't help but feel it was a big step backwards for the series, especially with other big Nintendo IPs moving on to the Switch hardware, making their games bigger and better than ever. I didn't feel this was a big issue when playing through the story. I used pretty much exclusively Galar Pokemon during the playthrough to try as many of the new Pokemon as I could. But in the post-game, I do miss some of my old favourites, just sitting there gathering dust in Pokémon Home. And yes, some of the Pokémon that didn't make the cut will be coming back, as well as the addition of some brand new ones with the expansion pass when the Isle of Armor launches in June. Better late than never, I guess. One of the excuses for the massively cut down decks was the fact that creating new models for each of the existing Pokémon would simply take too much time that could be spent on high quality animations elsewhere. Even though they look almost identical to 3DS ones. Which is fine. In fact, it's what I was expecting. I always thought that the point of the 3DS models is that they could be upscaled for more powerful hardware to future-proof them and make a more seamless transition onto the Switch. I mean, they looked fine on the 3DS's pretty aged hardware. They looked fine in Let's Go, and they looked fine in Swoosh. But for argument's sake, let's give Game Freak the benefit of the doubt on this one. Let's say they've been working from the ground up on these brand new models for all these Pokemon, and that they just happen to look very similar to the 3DS ones. Surely that means that after all the time they spent on those new models, that when the expansion is out, all 600 Pokemon are guaranteed to be in the next Switch game. If not available in the world, then at least making it possible to bring them forward through Pokémon Home. And that's what I'm nervous about. By moving forward with a reduced dex from this point in the series, being able to use Pokemon that I already have will effectively become a selling point for the game. Or at least it would be for losers like me who have an emotional attachment to my Staraptor I caught in 2008. And this would require me to keep and renew my Pokémon Home subscription like they're holding them hostage. Now obviously this is all speculation on my part, and I hope I'm wrong in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the time the next Switch entry is released, we have another dex of about 400 or so different Pokémon, with more included in paid DLC. Then the games would have a rotating roster of those Pokémon returning from previous generations, mixed in with new additions. Though the base game did feel a bit barebones to me, they did announce an expansion pass with 2 new areas to explore in place of the usual third title like Pokémon Mace or something. So I do appreciate not having to play through what is essentially the same game in order to get at the added content. The expansion pass promises to introduce 2 new areas to the region, the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, both of which can be explored with full camera controls like in the wild area. It also plans to bring in additional story content, new characters, Pokémon, legendaries, Gigantamax forms and outfits. Whether or not it'll be worth 30 big ones remains to be seen, but I'm curious to see how it might add to the longevity of the game. And while they haven't shown off much outside of concept art and a little bit of gameplay, against my better judgment, I'm allowing myself to get a little bit excited. So to get the full Pokémon Generation 8 experience, you gotta get the full price game, then the DLC expansion pass. Then if you want to bring your old Pokémon across the technological void onto the Switch, let's say that's an annual home subscription too. I know none of this is essential, they aren't making me buy it, but if they're adding over 200 Pokémon, new legendaries and islands to explore in the region, I'd say that's a pretty substantial piece of content to be missing out on. So I'm going to be a bit presumptuous and say that the expansion pass is an essential purchase to experience all of what Gen 8 has to offer. I mean, I've already committed to buying the game full price, I might as well buy the expansion too, I've come this far. Pokémon Home, less of an essential purchase, but I've spent hundreds of hours in previous titles breeding the Pokémon that I wanted. I've already invested so much time and effort that I'd be a sucker not to, right? And it's not going to break the bank, I guess, although it is practically another Switch Online subscription, which I also need to play online, so I guess there's that as well. Wow, this is really adding up. Okay, what the hell, let's do it. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love me some Pokémon. But do I love it enough to shell out over 100 big ones just to get the full experience for this one game? I mean, I want to say no, but I'm almost certainly going to buy it. I've already invested too much time, money and effort into the series so far, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's too late for me. I'm one of those suckers that's going to buy whatever they put out no matter what. God, I'm the worst. And it's because of stuff like this and my history with the series that my opinion of the game is going to end up pretty biased to some degree. I can't help it. But when I think about all the other Nintendo series that made the transition to Switch hardware, this is by far the most underwhelming. Sword and Shield sold really well. People outraged by changes and problems the game might have clearly isn't enough to put off the average Pokémon fan from the series altogether. But that being said, it in no way diminishes the genuine problems people have with the game. The game sold like hotcakes as well, so there may not be a lot of incentive for the developers to improve on things going forward, and if anything, it could be the opposite. But hey, maybe the new areas will be a game changer and I'm going to fall back in love with the series. But as it stands with just the base game, it was pretty good. It definitely has its problems, and I really hope these are addressed going forward for the next entry, but as a whole, yeah, I had a lot of fun. Who knows, maybe Temtem will be the next big thing and some viable competition might give them a kick up the arse to improve things. And it might not be very likely, but hey, maybe I'll boot up Pokémon Psychedelic Pearl or whatever and I'll be blown away, but for now, I'm a little worried about what's coming next for the series.